Good afternoon, y'all. You've seen me come up here at least 24 times this weekend. We have a couple more speakers to present for you. Next up is Julian Baggio from Australia. I've known this guy for a long time, but I don't really know him because every time we hang out, there's a lot of inebriation involved and slurring. So hopefully that won't happen during this talk. So please help me in welcoming Julian Baggio.
Good day, everyone. I'd like to thank Jake Adams and the MACNA committee for the opportunity to speak with you today. It's a great honour. In Australia, we don't get an opportunity to speak with hobbyists, retailers, wholesalers and professionals from the public aquarium fraternity at the same time. And this is the reason why I love MACNA. The exchange of ideas between passionate people can only be good for our industry's future. I think it's important to start by explaining a little bit about the management of our industry. So just bear with me, we'll get to the exciting stuff in good time. The Queensland Aquarium fishery, which is Australia's largest, is the one in which Cairns Marine operates. To get an appreciation of the size of our fishery, you have to realise that the Great Barrier Reef is about approximately half the size of the state of Texas. Now, adjacent to this, we have the Coral Sea Fishery, which is twice the size and accessed by only 2 fish collectors, and where many of the endemic fish species that are most often seen in the US market are sourced. 30% of the area within the GBR, Great Barrier Reef, is closed to fishing, and almost 2,900 reefs that make it up are rarely, if ever, visited by a fishing vessel of any type. The Queensland Aquarium fishery manages to visit less than 0.8% of the GBR for less than 2 hours each year. Now, in comparison to the enormous size of our fishery, there are relatively few operators, and most are fairly small. In many instances, the collectors are also the exporters, and they are involved in every step of the process. As a result, traceability is another key strength of the Australian industry. We can tell you where, how, and how many fish and corals were collected, and provide this data direct to fisheries management to ensure informed decisions are made that are both practical and effective. The transparency of our supply chain is closely related to the comprehensive management of our fishery, and this relationship is the polar opposite to that found in several other countries, where about 70 to 80% of your country's aquarium stock is sourced. Sustainable wild collection for aquarium supply is the ultimate environmental choice because it has a smaller carbon footprint than culturing fish and corals intensively by man-made facilities. But the environmental credentials of this type of operation hinges on the key term, sustainability. So what makes our fishery demonstrably sustainable? We work on one of the greatest natural wonders of the world, and fittingly, it is co-managed by both federal and state government agencies to ensure that it remains one into the future. Our fishery is also independently assessed by the Australian Department of Environment. Back in the early 1990s, the Queensland aquarium industry had enough of being dictated to by management and fighting politicians seeking to carve out personal legacies at our expense. Years of adversity helped operators to realise that in order to survive in this game, industry must be involved in helping set the rules. To achieve this, we needed a strong industry body representing the majority of stakeholders in a unified and cohesive front. Provision Reef is the current manifestation of this body and seeks to arm industry against future battles through a close partnership with fisheries management for mutual benefit. Through Provision Reef's collaboration with fisheries management, the first stewardship action plan was formulated. It was a world first in the fact that the fishing industry voluntarily initiated the process. By working with management to set down procedures in response to instances of natural disturbance, as soon as the issue is identified, aquarium collectors took ownership of the environment upon which their livelihoods so heavily relied. We now have immediate action by the collectors instead of waiting for the slow wheels of bureaucracy to turn and dictate a response to environmental stresses. Examples of industry in action. And since the implementation of the Stewardship Action Plan, it has been called into action on several occasions. In one instance, a voluntary moratorium on collection was implemented within a week of a major flooding event taking place. The Queensland Aquarium industry has become the true custodian of the environment which its members operate. In these days of growing environmental consciousness, our community is the ultimate environmental performance auditor. To this end, we have worked towards acquiring a means of quality assurance to help reinforce consumer confidence. Cairns Marine were the first aquarium stock supplier to satisfy all 4 criteria of the Marine Aquarium Council standards. We're also the first commercial entity working with animals to be accredited by the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums. But enough about the management of our fishery. You're all here today to see how we collect the amazing fish and corals and understand better the habitats in which they are found. Probably the most important part of collectors' equipment is the boat, and Cairns Marine has 2 big ones. Our flagship is a sharpshooter. She's a lean, mean machine, and generally used for the shorter coral trips to our local reefs. With a custom 15-foot by 17-foot live well constructed in her belly, we also rely upon her for our specialised large animal collection expeditions. The Clearwater is our workhorse. A little bit heavier and slower, she's able to handle all types of weather and used for our Coral Sea collection trips. Fully fueled, the Clearwater holds about 2,500 gallons of diesel and has the greatest carrying capacity of either of our boats. These vessels, used in conjunction with the 2 16-foot tender vessels, represent the real strength of our business. With these platforms, we have the ability to access a vast range of habitats and ensure supply of the widest diversity of fish and coral to the aquarium trade worldwide. After listening to Monika's talk on Friday about her father, how he would carry the fish with buckets back and from the boat, and finally the outboard back to the house over his shoulder, I reckon that our divers have it pretty easy. With bags, buckets, up to 4 nets, and dragging around almost 500 feet of hose in strong currents, our aquarium collectors do have their hands full, literally. Fish are collected using barrier nets and held in flip-top buckets. They do this until the end of the dive, which can be anywhere from between 1.5 and 3 hours in length. They usually begin their dives deeper, working up into the shallows. Working on hooker hoses, they are supplied with air for as long as they want to stay underwater, but by law, use dive computers to make sure they don't go into decompression time. In other words, they do not reach a point, unlike Rufus, where the nitrogen builds up in their blood, so they require a decompression stop prior to reaching the surface. It's important to understand that collection of fish is an art form that takes at least a year to gain even a basic competency. I always explain to people that the fish they see in our facility were in the wrong place at the wrong time, as we only ever get a small percentage of what we actually see while diving, like the angel in this video. You can see we've, in this video, Cato, the diver, set the net at the end of the structure. He knows that the angelfish is under the ledge there, and gently coaxes it along and out of its protected spot into the open area where the barrier net's set. Once it hits the barrier net, angelfish do actually get caught up sometimes by their gill spines, but cheek spines, I should say. But it's not actually a net that actually catches them up in there and damages their eyes or their mouth, so it's very, very soft on them. A collector needs to be able to understand the habitat preference as well as the behaviour of the species that they are chasing. They need to be able to instantly sum up the topography of the reef and choose the ideal place to set up their barrier net. Finding individuals on isolated bommies or on the right ground is often the key that allows us to get a good set and increases our chance of fooling the fish into our net. Again, this demonstrates the process fairly well. It's a nice clear example of the net being set and then gradually moving the fish along until it is out in the clear. In this instance, you see the fish actually saw the net and turned back, but having the diver up behind it nice and close, it He actually went for the bombing across and got on the stand of the net. The following video shows how we collect Centropyge flavissimus in the Coral Sea. We experience high currents in these areas, and the 500 feet of hose that keeps us alive also makes life difficult in these conditions. You'll actually see the diver tie off the hose to take the pressure that the current's applying to him. In this video, you also see a clear example of how we use the bar to rattle the fish out of their hiding spots. You're just banging it against the rock, you're not damaging the coral, it just scares the fish out. It's common for angels and butterflies to ensnare themselves with their fins and spines, but no damage is done. This footage is also a great example of the care taken by the divers when removing fish from the nets. It just shows the intensive nature of fishing in this way. I chose this video for two reasons. Firstly, it clearly demonstrates how we use our scoop net in conjunction with our barrier net. So again, you'll see the barrier net set. The diver's then coaxing the fish out. In this case, he uses the scoop net as to push the fish. It's not actually trying to get the fish in that net, it's more to move it into the barrier net and then follow up with a scoop net. It's highly turbid water. I also chose this video for the fact that it shows the care taken to collect the more delicate species, like a juvenile Pinnatus batfish. Anyone who's handled a batfish knows they have extremely small and delicate scales, and the gloves worn by collectors prevent rubbing. You can see the diver actually hands inside the net, getting a secure hold on the fish, bringing it out, and then placing it in the flip-top bucket. Again, it just gives you an idea of the amount of the intensive labour that's involved in hand catching each fish. Now, I put this video in to show you the true meaning of the term hand collected. Now, I know there are cuts in this footage to give the skeptics out there an argument, but you can put me on a lie detector test because I've seen our experienced divers do it several times. Now, as long as you don't mind sticking your hand in a hole that may contain a moray eel, then I think most people in the room could actually do this. Luckily in Australia, there aren't many things that can kill you, so you're pretty safe most of the time. Now, this is an example of how we collect some of the cave fish and requires use of our specialised Pseudonet. And we call it a Pseudonet because the guys use it for catching Pseudochromis. But again, as in this video, you'll see there's a variety of species that we are able to use that net for. These nets have a large opening and a deep belly, and ultra-fine and stiff nets mean the fish do not really see it. It's very similar, seeing Rufus's collection video, it's a very similar kind of structure, I think, to the nets they're using. In this instance, the diver is collecting blue and yellow assessors, but we also use these nets for our Fiji damsels. The size of these nets allowed us to hold a number of fish comfortably and continue to collect. We find that having a few fish in the net actually helps lure the next ones in. Safety isn't always in numbers. Now, some toxic fish are held separately in containers. And as well as that, males and females of some species, like clownfish, are kept together throughout the process to maintain pair bonds. Keeping mated pairs together throughout the collection, holding and shipping process is another point of differentiation from many collection operations in other parts of the world. The ability to supply mated pairs is obviously of value to aquaculture operations from a commercial standpoint, but also attractive to the hobbyist who doesn't have access to large numbers of individuals to help establish bonding. You can see in this video that we actually only take the 2 largest individuals from the host anemone to ensure that we have the ability to harvest this same anemone in another 12 months' time. We actually leave, so there might be 4 or 5 actual individuals on that anemone, and we'll collect only the 2 largest and leave the other individuals behind. So we can go back and harvest that same anemone in 12 months' time. By leaving individuals behind, we can be sure that the desired species will remain associated with the host anemone, and we've employed this strategy for many years with great success. Aquarium collectors over the years have been criticised for wild harvest of clownfish species. Correct collection practices can not only guarantee sustainable future harvests of the target clownfish species, but by leaving individuals behind, it helps protect the host anemone from predation. You see the two individuals, bond pair, in the container, up into the specialised catch bag that we keep those individuals, the containers, separate to our main collection bucket. Once on board, the fish are transferred from flip-top buckets into smaller, perforated plastic containers and then transported to our larger holding drums. Containers are matched to the size of the species, with more delicate fish given more space to ensure their comfort. Again, the batfish gets a larger container. It's also obviously very elongated dorsally, so yeah, just allows some of those type of fish, moorish idols, also can be kept in those larger containers. Now each of the large drums, holding drums, receives individual constant flow of fresh seawater to ensure that oxygen levels are maintained and waste materials removed throughout the course of the trip. We also keep our invertebrates, some of the Stenopus species that are paired, we also keep them containerised as well. So it's employed on a range of different species. Fish considered too large or unsuitable for confined spaces are left in the collection buckets. Each bucket receives its own fresh supply of seawater to guarantee optimal water quality. And these buckets sit alongside the larger drums with the empty containers in that case, but they sit alongside them. And we also carry 25-gallon, up to 25-gallon containers for those fish that need even greater space to spread their fins during the time on the boat. Coral collection. Each piece of coral is selected for colour, quality and size. Depending on the species, corals are held together or bagged separately to minimise stinging into specific aggression. Now, depending on the coral, divers can swim over as much as 99% of the target species in order to find suitable pieces that fit the profile. Of the 1% that is collected, the highly sought after ultra grade may only represent 5% of that. To put this into context, that means that our divers need to swim past 2,000 coral colonies for every ultra grade coral that we collect. This may explain why we do not only collect ultra corals. They are truly the diamonds of the sea. Now, we visit many different habitats to access the corals that we collect. It takes a keen eye to spot some colonies within crevices, and this trained eye also takes years to acquire. Divers learn to look for the habitat more than looking for the actual coral. Identification of the preferred habitat where species are found allows a diver to scan the area and look in the spot where it's most likely that coral will be situated. Some dives are in areas where there is no specific target species, and more aggressive corals need to be kept separate to avoid stinging. Knowledge of what corals can be held together in close proximity for the length of the dive So it means the difference between getting those colonies back to our facility in a saleable condition. In this video, you'll see the type of habitat where we find our Cattalophylla. The diver in this video is using a rebreather unit, but we don't usually collect these corals on rebreather, just was for the ease of the shoot. These corals prefer the interreefal zone, and which experience continual deposits of fine sedimentation. Coral species diversity in these areas is fairly limited. In this environment, it really makes sense that Cattalophylla colonies are free living. They're able to inflate themselves like a balloon to effectively float above the sludge. Looking like some kind of sand anemone when you see them, they're found amongst beds of calopa with very little reef structure to be seen. It's quite a barren twilight zone. So in these areas, we also find isolated colonies of Goniopora. Amongst the stands of Halimeda, the Goniopora colonies enjoy this highly turbid, nutrient-rich environment. Let's see how much silt's getting stirred up every time you touch the bottom. A lot different to most people's tanks, I'd imagine. Tracheophylla loves the sludge. The common theme is that these corals are all free-living and able to inflate polyps to an incredible size, allowing them to remain above the ever-increasing sediment layer. After showing you these videos, I hope there's one thing you learned today to spread around to your fellow reef enthusiasts. It's this. Cattalophylla and Tracheophylla do not live perched on rock walls. Please keep them on the substrate where they belong. Goniopora species differ between species, so I won't include them in that rule. Lastly is some video of a Acanthophylla / Cynarina. We've it's kind of like an in-between species. It's not our normal desh, and it's not out like our other Cynarinas, which have opaque areas in the tissue. And showing we're placing those in buckets as we walk around, as we travel around. The following video gives you an idea of how our divers work across this type of habitat. Individual pieces are found in close proximity. The diver will usually be spotting the next piece as he's reaching and putting that piece that he's just previously spotted in the bucket. Again, species diversity is limited, and while the corals are abundant in this area, the areas where they're found is, the distribution, I should say, is quite patchy. It's for this reason Cattalophylla has in the past been regarded as rare, but the truth of the matter is its better description is rarely seen, as most people prefer to dive in areas of optimal visibility, and the preferred habitat of these corals is very far from that. 18 metres, which is 30 feet, roughly. Can vary. I put this video in mainly because it's a nice segue from the bottom up to the boat. It's a nice relaxing shot. The Remora come off a large shark, I was told, so there's a shark somewhere there below. Once the coral's been brought on board, they're sorted by species and cleaned to remove excess sediment. Corals of the same species are held together in trays, and their numbers are recorded in order to notify our local fisheries department of the total catch. Here you can see Cattalophylla pretty much being sorted side by side in the trays. Now, by notifying our fisheries authority of the coral species and quantities collected, the intended location point of unload, we provide them with an opportunity to police our catch and ensure that quota levels are not being exceeded. A minimum of 2 hours are required for prior reporting to give them time to organise a welcoming party. They can check exactly what we've brought back into port. And with the wide variety of species collected, it is important that corals are sorted into groups that are sympathetic with each other. Delicate and sensitive species are isolated on their own, and more robust corals kept together to maximise our onboard carrying capacity. Once sorted, the trays are stacked in larger coral holding tubs and are fed a constant supply of fresh seawater, exactly like our fish. And that helps, again, to maintain optimal water quality. there you can see the different species kept separate. In this case, a tray of fungia. And these trays just are sat down in the larger container, and they sit on top of each other, so they don't actually pack down, obviously depending on which way you stack them. But it's a really effective and efficient way of holding the corals on board. We've got lots of water going through those larger containers, so they're getting flushed continually. Upon return to port, we utilise an onboard hydraulic crane to move the large holding containers and drums from the boat back onto the dock. This minimises the handling of the pieces and the fish. Obviously, if they can remain kind of in water throughout that process and not be dried out as much as possible, it helps. With some of the coral, we'll drain the water down, call it low tide, but it's only for a short period of time. Now, the fact that divers in this video are not wearing shoes has been pointed out to me as being a bit of a workplace health and safety issue. I can assure everyone now that this has been addressed. They must all wear flip-flops now, so we're covered. Once transferred to our vehicle, all the containers receive a supply of oxygen via an octopus airline. pH and ammonia is not an issue for the short period of time it takes to get us back to our facility, but temperature during summer can be. During these times, we have a reflective insulation material which we can use to cover the containers and drums, and which works to great effect. So transport back to our facility takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and then the animals are unloaded across 24 custom-built recirculating systems. Mechanical and biological filtration of our systems is accomplished through the use of large sand filters, which are backwashed at least once a week. Protein waste is removed using Sharan skimmers, and a large sand ozone unit helps to polish the water and maintain high ORP. We actually have employed and poached from the US a full-time curator with over 16 years' experience in the public aquarium industry. She oversees the monitoring of our systems and has a team of dedicated water analysis people using Palintest photometers to guarantee that we know where we stand. We have over 10,000 gallons of seawater in storage for backwashing and water changes, and a lot of this water is brought back from the reef where it's collected. Our boats have the capacity to hold over 5,000 gallons on board, which they use for ballast on their way back from the Coral Sea reefs. This pristine seawater is transported back to our facility for use in our systems. Now, fortunately at Cairns Marine we get to work with some amazing large creatures. Through our involvement with the public aquarium, at any one time, we'll have a number of iconic megafauna under our care. All the animals in our facility are observed under the same watchful eyes, and this means that the smallest chromis enjoys the same standard of care as the giant hammerhead in the tank next door. We also have some weird and wonderfuls that we see pass through our hands. Apart from making the daily job more interesting, I think it tests the expertise of our husbandry staff. Again, this experience only serves to improve the skills of our aquarists, and sometimes making them think outside the box. I think this works for the benefit of all. Now, our divers are exploring ever deeper and are starting to visit areas in the Coral Sea that have never been seen before with the experienced eyes of a collector. While currently only diving down to about 230 feet, utilising rebreather units, we have 3 divers that are trained to work even deeper and are excited at the potential of what we may find a little bit further down the slope. Now, knowing what is new and rare when you're in these areas is the key. With limited time to work, it's critical that no time is wasted. Minutes at this depth means hours spent in decompression. To date, our divers have discovered several new species, along with some that are known but never before found in Australian waters. It has been an incredible experience to be involved in the process of sharing these new discoveries with our hobby. I thank Reef builders for helping us get that information out to the general population. It's an amazing resource. Working with an aquarium collection and wholesale facility brings our staff into contact with an incredibly diverse range of fish species. Learning their husbandry requirements and behaviours also takes a trained eye, and competency can take years to achieve. In my mind, the best part of the job is that we never stop learning, and the next challenge may only be a boat unload away. Same goes for our corals. Whenever the dive team returns from a week at sea, they always bring back some amazing pieces that never cease to amaze. I often feel like a kid in a candy store as I pore over a fresh collection of Acropora, Echinophilia, Acanthastria and Scalemia. Only recently we unloaded coral from a collection area that took us 3 days to access and had never been visited by a coral collector. Looking through the selection of species and ranges of colours, it left me speechless. And I actually remembered how I felt when I first walked into Cairns Marine 18 years ago. These moments are truly priceless. Our company, like many in our industry, is based around the family that owns it. The Squires have had aquariums in their blood for over 3 generations. They are committed to the longevity of our fishery and industry and hope to hand their business over to the next generation that are just starting to get their hands wet. Supporting the family to maintain the standards expected of the Australian collection and export company, we have a team of dedicated staff. Apart from the varied levels of education and training, more importantly, they are a collection of fish and coral nuts. And I think that that's also another key success of our business. We all share a commitment to continual improvement. For all the reasons mentioned up to this point, a hobbyist purchasing animals from our fishery can feel safe in the knowledge that their precious new tank mate has been collected from a well-managed fishery. Collected using best practice and transported back and cared for by experienced staff in a state-of-the-art facility. We all need to start insisting on acquiring animals from sustainable fisheries because the purchasing habits of those involved in this industry will help to ensure its long-term survival. I just want to thank again Jake for the opportunity and the MACNA committee for letting me speak to you today, as well as the Squire family for their ongoing commitment to education and awareness of our fishery, and making it possible to be here today and share our story with you. Thank you.